The years of stalemate on the Western Front were decisively ended in August 1918 when the Allied nations launched the first of a series of offensives that drove the German army out of France and threatened to take the war onto German soil, forcing the German government to sue for peace. The resulting armistice came into effect at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. The Great War had ended with an Allied victory. The Road to Victory series reveals the parts played by the Army Corps during 1918 and the final phase of the war, the period which came to be known as the 100 Days Offensive.
The Royal Engineers undertook many tasks in the First World War, transporting men and supplies, creating trenches, building roads and railways, as well as supporting the infantry in the advances and retreats of every battle. New skills were needed, creating a demand for new companies such as the tunnelling companies and Special Brigade, and existing units such as survey companies were expanded to include new duties. The engineers expanded massively during the war, from 25,000 men in 1914 to over 300,000 by the end of the war. The survey companies increased from 3 to 7 companies, and the newly formed tunnelling and special companies from 25 and 29 companies. These units were introduced to support and enhance the field companies of the Royal Engineers and the wider army. Tunnelling and mining companies were used on a colossal scale during hostilities. Reaching their height in 1916, the companies continued to be used for the duration of the war. Tunnelling companies had been introduced in the early years of the war, where it became apparent that the field companies could not keep up with the demand for trenches and dugouts, as well as specialist mining operations. In the spring and summer of 1918, the tunnellers came above ground to assist the field companies and infantry. The British attempted to stop the heavy attacks by the German forces in early 1918 by destroying bridges in the Germans' path and holding up the advance. The tunnellers, used to working with explosives, were ideal for assisting with the demolitions and setting charges on the bridges marked for destruction. Scouting parties were formed as part of the advance to check for German landmines that had been left behind in the withdrawal. These parties were attached to the advanced troops and checked dugouts and buildings for explosives, making them safe for occupation by the British forces. In this way, some £2.5 million of explosives were removed and made harmless. As this was happening, the tunnellers were still deployed below ground, constructing deep dugouts and reserve defence lines, safe areas for thousands of men in the event of a retreat. The widespread use of chemical warfare was a major feature of the 1914-18 conflict. Gas warfare came under the Royal Engineers in April 1916 with the formation of the Special Brigade. Used in most major offensives and feared by all soldiers, gas warfare often posed as much of a threat to the side which used it as their enemies. Livens projectors and Stokes mortars were rushed to the front lines at every opportunity, the Livens projector firing canisters containing 30 pounds of gas, and the 4-inch Stokes mortar firing smoke and gas bombs. From April to December 1918, the Special Brigade executed 348 operations, using 12,000 cylinders of gas, 100,000 Livens projectors, and 120,000 Stokes mortars. Tables produced show the units of gas used and the types of weapon that released the gas, as well as casualties. Surveying was vital in the ever-changing landscape of the Western Front. Royal Engineer surveyors produced millions of maps to record where trenches and craters were, where bridges could be placed at crossing points, and where gun emplacements were sited. Although aerial photography, provided by the newly formed Royal Flying Corps, could help, flash spotting and sound ranging run by the Royal Engineers proved invaluable in surveying the positions of hostile guns. By recording the visual signs of a fired gun, flash spotting could locate the gun's position, although visibility had to be good and the spotter had to be looking in the right direction. Sound ranging was a more accurate and reliable method, recording the times at which the sounds of gunfire reached certain positions. This method proved to be 90% accurate in matching up the sounds of the guns with the locations. The calibre of gun could soon be estimated by wavelength, although to get accurate results the same standard microphone had to be used. Once these had been standardised, simply listening to gunfire and comparing the waves was enough to determine the size as well as location of the gun. At the Battle of Amiens in August 1918, the visibility was too poor for flash spotting, but the accuracy of the sound ranging was able to locate the German batteries and direct the British fire, with the result that the infantry advance was almost free from gunfire. This strip shows the hours before and after 11 o'clock on November the 11th, 1918. At precisely 11 o'clock, the guns fall silent, and only ambient noises are picked up after the moment of the armistice. The traditional role of the Royal Engineers was constructing and demolishing bridges, as assisted by the tunnelling companies. During the last 100 days, one notable event was the crossing of the Sambre-Oise Canal in early November. In one of the last Allied victories of the war, Royal Engineers, Lancashire Fusiliers, the 2nd Battalion Royal Sussex and the 2nd Manchester were engaged in crossing the Sambre-Oise Canal near Orr. The canal was in the route of the advance, and at 70 feet wide was not easily fordable except by bridge. The field companies constructed portable footbridges and heavier bridges for vehicle crossings. The Royal Engineers Museum holds 3 Victoria Crosses that were won by Royal Engineers on the 4th of November for their work maintaining bridges under fire during the crossing. Adam Archibald and Arnold Waters of 218 Field Company and George Findlay of 409 Field Company. Just 2 days later, a 4th was awarded to Brett Cloutman, who swam the canal at Pont-sur-Sambre to cut demolition charges on a bridge and save it for the British crossing. This VC was the last to be awarded during the First World War, a suitable conclusion for the huge engineering tasks that the Royal Engineers undertook.